Hello, and welcome to Shortcut Up CNC. In a video I'd have done recently, I showed you how to create a fence post cap with several different tool methods. There were four. Well, now I've created a fifth one. The fifth one is a model that was imported into V-Carve Pro. It can also be created in Aspire and used with the roughing and finishing tool pass. And you would use the same tool pass in V-Carve Pro. Here we have the model that's laid out in order to do a fence post cap. And we use a roughing tool path, a finishing tool path, and a profile cutout. So let's look at this. Yeah, go to the 3D view first. Give me some tool vectors to use, I should say. Now give me the tool pass. There you see it's doing the roughing. Now it's going back and cleaning it up with the 3D finish, and then it does the profile. Actually, you probably could get away with not having a roughing tool path. Just use a ball nose or a end mill for the 3D finish. And it'll give you the same, pretty much the same type of surface. On this particular model, really doesn't have that much roughness to it, so you really don't need a roughing tool path. Unless you're going to use a real small ball nose, like a 1/8 or a 1/32, then you may want to consider using a roughing tool path first and then cleaning it up with the finish. But anyway, let's get rid of the excess material and take a look at this thing. That was based on the model. Now you can add a flat to the top of it if you want to. I mean, it's not going to hurt because you can still work in here even though you've got a model. To give you a perfect example, we're going to go ahead and add a 2-inch square to the center of this, and we're going to make sure it's centered, and we're going to take and expand this out a little bit more than 2 inches by using the transform tool, holding down the shift key and grab a handle, and it'll bring it out evenly all around. Now we'll take and create a tool path for that, which will be a pocket tool path. And I'm only going to go a 1/2 inch deep. Yeah, with a 125, yeah, that'll be sufficient. And we're going to preview that. It actually created a pocket. Now that would be good for putting like something ornamental that's got a little base to it, adding it to the fence post cap. So there you see a couple of ideas that can be made using the tools that are available within desktop, V-Carve Pro, and Aspire. Let's look at the gadget created while we're here. The gadget created is really a interesting feature because it creates all your vectors and then it creates your tool paths for those vectors. Now, I will highlight these vectors. I'm going to look in this lower corner right here. It's telling me there are 1,591 vectors laid out there. Now, can you imagine laying that out yourself manually? That's an awful lot of vectors. And you can see that by me zooming in real tight on this. And of course, your vectors overlap each other. And that's another thing that you'd have to try to figure while you're creating the various tool paths for it. So the gadget is an interesting item. And unfortunately, the gadget is not available in your desktop, Vectric's desktop version of the software, but it is available in both V-Carve Pro and Aspire. So let's look at this one in the 3D view, and you'll see how it's created. And it's rather quick because I'm using a low preview quality. And there, and it's got like a little ridge on the end there. You can get rid of that by tightening up on the profile tool path on the outside perimeter, or you can leave that. That kind of adds a little to the looks of the cap, fence post cap. And of course, in this lower preview, it shows some artifacts there. So that's really no concern now. But anyway, there you've seen how the gadget creates. Let's go take a look. In fact, I got a better idea. Let's create a new sheet. In fact, okay. Add a new sheet in here. There we go. And now I'm going to go to the gadget. And I'm going to add some tools in here. Let's see, I want to use a 1/4" end mill for the roughing. Now the carving, it only allows me to select a ball nose. I'm going to use a 1/4" ball nose. And then the profile tool path, I want to set it up to allow me to use the, let's see, look at that again. That's profile. Okay. We just use a down cut end mill to finish it off. And we're going to make it 10 by 10 with a 1" slope. And we're not going to have a flat on the top of it. We're going to come to a point. Objects without contour information found on layer, ignoring layer contains grouped vectors. These must be ungrouped for this script. Okay, no problem. What happened here is the gadget is set up for having your XY datum in the lower left hand corner. I have it set up on this particular demo with it all in the center. The XY datum is in the center of the material board. Now there's one of two things I can do. I can readjust the position of this XY datum for my job setup, or I can leave it and just move my vectors and recalculate the tool paths. I'm going to take moving this, drawing tab, center it, Now I'm going to take a look at my tool paths, calculate. All right, that's where it should be. Now we go back to the 2D view and we'll turn that one off. Go to the carving tool path. It's right where it should be, and it highlighted all my vectors. I calculate it. It's good. Now we go back to 2D view, profile path, and it shows my cutout vector. We calculate that, and then we highlight all the vectors and preview. And there it's cutting just like it did before. Well, not exactly like before, but it's cutting it out. And get rid of the excess, and there we have our cap that we just created. And it comes to a point instead of a flat. So there you've seen how to use the gadget method in order to create a fence post cap. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all these tool paths here. I'm going to delete my vectors, and I'm going to do a fluting tool path. And by doing the fluting, we go to the rectangle. We put a 2-inch square in the center there, just like it is here. And then we close this so we can turn that off. Now we reopen that. And that's kind of to edit an existing shape. Hold the ship. Okay, well, that's the existing shape. I don't want to, I want to create another one. Now I could have used the offset tool if I knew the distance from there to there, but I'd rather just create a new, 10 inches by 10 inches, and I want it square corners. Create. All right. So there we have the vectors that define what the pyramid's going to look like, or stop pyramid, step pyramid. It's got a step right here at the very top. Okay, now we draw a vector from corner to corner. Spacebar to disconnect. And then we take that and we're going to go to a circular copy. What I want to do is I want to circle this all around inside this, in this area here. But what's going to happen is it's a longer arc. The shorter distance is going to let it extend a bit. It's okay. Plus also I'm going to go from the center, so it's going to go on the inside here. And I'll show you how to quickly clean that up after we get this done. Now, I don't have to worry about this because it's telling me what the measurements are, 4 by 4, from the datum point is this center. It's 4 inches this way downward and 4 inches this way on the X. This is the Y, this is the X. Okay, now I want to go to the rotation center, which would be 0, 0. So what I'm going to do is change this to 0, 0, 0, 0. Now you notice the little indicator there. That's my circular, or the center of the rotation. It was here because that's the center of the rotation for that vector. It moved it out here to the center of my project. rotate copies. Let's see. I want 200 of them on a 360 degree, which is total round. And there it's creating them. Boom, created all my vectors that I want. Now, you notice the vectors didn't go to the inside. The reason that's for that is because I drew it from the corner of the square. So what I'm going to have to do now is I'm going to say undo the array copy, and I'm going to take this vector and I'm going to draw it out to the center. Now I'm going to say copy that array. Of course, you notice it moved my center. We have to put the center back on the project, not on the vector. So we say undo the array, and we change this to 0, 0, 0, 0, and we say copy. Now we have our vectors. I'm satisfied with that part. Now, we don't want them stretching out here, and we don't need them on the inside of the square. There's a feature here in V-Carve where you can clear the outside of the boundary and clear the inside of the boundary. Select the objects you wish to trim. Okay, they're already selected. Now hold down the Shift key. That clears the inside boundary. We want this inside boundary, and we say clear. Wow, isn't that interesting? Now we click this to the outside. We hold the Shift key down, and we click this little guy here, that vector, and we say clear. Voila, we have our vectors created for our toolpaths. So now all we do is we leave those selected, and I can close this here, and I go to the fluting toolpath. Now flute depth's going to be a total of 1 inch because I want to go from the top here down. And you notice all my start vectors or start nodes are here at the top. Now, if they happen to be the reverse, you can do one of two things. You can redo all your vectors by drawing your vector from top to bottom, because you may have drawn it from the outside corner to the inside. And when you draw it, that's what creates your start node, where you started from. So that's a little another tip there for you. So now we want to ramp over the complete length. I want to use a ball nose. I want it linear. I don't want it to dig in. I want a nice, straight, smooth, linear, not smooth, but linear top to it. So now I'm going to say calculate that, and then I'm going to preview it. And of course, you got to reset from the last instance that you used this. Now, preview the vectors. Now, if you didn't want these cusps that you have here, okay, let's see. We need to put a profile toolpath in here. Of course, we need a profile vector to choose. So I'm going to close that one. Outside, I want to go 2020 deep. And I want to calculate this, preview it, get rid of my excess. Now, what I was getting at a few minutes ago is if you don't want these cusps, what you do is you increase the amount of vectors. Say you had 200 vectors, well, you increase it to maybe 300 vectors, and that'll make these cusps much smaller. They may not totally disappear, but they'll be a lot smaller. But this gives it a kind of aesthetic look. I mean, the water will run off through these cusps. And there's your square at the top, the little flat spot. If you don't want that flat spot, you can eliminate it just by eliminating it and drawing your vectors straight out and just clean up the outside. So there you have it on a fluting toolpath. So now what we'll do is we'll get rid of our vectors, delete this toolpath and this toolpath, and now we're going to do the chamfer style, chamfer creation. So we take and draw our vector 10 inches, 10 inches. Okay. Now we're going to draw another one, make it 2 inches, and we close that. Now we're going to do the chamfer toolpath. Go refresh my memory here. Double click on this one. Double click on this. 7, 5, 50, 1, 3, 4, 4. Okay, so it's all the same. It hasn't been changed. And you slope downwards from the outside. So let's go back to this one. Double click. Chamfer toolpath. 7, 5, 0, 50, 1, 3, 4, 4, slopes downward outside. And you say calculate. Of course, we need the vectors. And we're going downwards, so you want to go downwards from this. That looks good. Preview the visible. And of course, it's going to have some nice little steps in it. And you can eliminate those steps by changing those new numbers around in your chamfer toolpath. And let's see, we're going to add to this .02 outside, end mill, 1/4 inch, calculate, and we're going to preview that and get rid of the excess material. And there you have the chamfer style. And of course, the chamfer style is based on these measurements. And of course, you have to play around with these measurements a bit, especially if you don't have an understanding of what they do. They got a little diagram here, but the diagram to me can be a little deceiving, especially when you're using a ball nose. And I'm using a 3/4 inch ball nose on this. So that's a pretty big ball nose. It's just catching the edge of it on these little ridges here. So there you have it, folks. The various styles of how to create the fence post cap for your fence using any one of these methods. And well, we haven't discussed the molding toolpath, and it might be getting a little close to time on this. So that will become in the next video. Thank you for watching Shark Cut Up CNC.